In today's deep dive, we take a look at a new potential Trump executive order that would target the NCAA over athlete pay. But before we take the deep dive, our quick five. 1, Bill Belichick tries to prove that love is blind. 2, Mr. Goodell goes to Washington. 3, a tale of 2 NFL legends. 4, why the Denver Nuggets are nearly unbeatable at home. And then 5, it turns out that referees might actually be blind. I'm Jason Kander, and I'm joined by Ravi Gupta and Adisu Demisi. Welcome back to The Game Within, where we talk about the business and politics of sports and how each shapes what happens on the field. For number 1 here, Ravi, take us through it.
Well, I don't know why I'm so excited to talk about this story. It's just so weird.
Maybe should have been our deep dive.
It's so weird. I honestly thought it was implied that this was our deep dive, but I caught up on the chain a little bit late. But I'm going to treat it like a deep dive because Bill Belichick has been, he caused a lot of pain to all of us, actually. Chiefs, the Falcons, that's for sure, and the Bills. I actually have a ton of respect for him, though, as a coach. I think he was a very disciplined coach who I think deserves a lot of credit along with Brady for what the Pats did. And I grudgingly respected him and actually in some ways really enjoyed his post-Patriots persona up until very recently. And I think there's been a turn recently. He's 73 years old and he has been dating a woman who is 24. I think he's been dating her since she was a little bit younger. Unclear about the origins of that, which is part of this controversy. And look, it's one thing if you're dating somebody who's 24. Look, I'm 42. I'm 30 years younger than Bill Belichick. If I was dating a 24-year-old, people would be talking about how weird that is. The fact that he is 30 years older than me, older than my father, and dating a 24-year-old in and of itself is strange. But I don't think that alone would do it. I think it's the fact that she is essentially this famously controlling guy who doesn't like anybody to tell him anything, who also doesn't like any distractions for his football teams, is currently coaching the University of North Carolina football team, yet has this 24-year-old basically managing his life, causing all kinds of attention. And then they issued a statement from the University of North Carolina PR website pushing back against allegations that she has an inappropriate level of control in his life. There's a lot of little details here, but, am I the only one who finds this really odd?
Adisu, you talk.
No. The answer is no. It is very odd. I think, obviously, the 50-year age difference is like the first thing where you're like, red flag, you could literally be her grandfather, but whatever, live your life. It's the change in Belichick is the thing that is causing everybody to light up, because he is or at least was when he was coaching the Pats, curmudgeonly. We all remember we're on to Cincinnati and the press conferences where he wouldn't say anything. And suddenly last year when he was out of coaching, he was like a little bit more out there, but now he's got somebody who is 50 years his junior and he's in a romantic relationship with controlling his life. It started, I think, a few months ago with whispers, but when it came to the fore was with this CBS interview from a couple weeks ago, I guess, which we should probably throw the clip up for people who have been following this saga. I was going to say scandal, but it's not a scandal.
It's not a scandal.
It's fun this somewhat fun story that is sports adjacent. So let's throw up the clip of Belichick in this interview with CBS.
Be following this relationship. They've got an opinion about your private life. It's got nothing to do with them, but they're invested in it. How do you deal with that?
Never been too worried about what everybody else thinks. Just try to do what I feel like is best for me and what's right.
How did you guys meet?
Not talking about this.
No?
No.
Okay. Well, can we also paint the picture for listeners here that he's very Belichick-ish? He's sitting there in a sweater with holes in it. He's clearly still kind of the same dude.
Yeah. But his girlfriend is off to the side, and for the listeners, and just pipes in the middle of a CBS interview. We're not talking about this. And it's like,
well, maybe she was talking to him, I guess.
Yeah, just honestly, a good question. Like, was she talking to Tony, what's his name, the interviewer? Or was she talking to the coach? But
does Bill Belichick need that instruction? This guy is like, there's never been anybody in the history of interviews better at not answering questions than Bill Belichick. That I find strange that she feels the need to even do that. He was doing a pretty good job of not answering the other question.
But that's look, we are all at some level communications professionals here, and maybe she is too. Like, I don't want to discount that she might be a talented
She's the CEO of Belichick.
Exactly. But
that's not a joke. She is. But she's also 24 years old. And like, when you're 24 years old, you don't have experience. Like, that's the kind of thing that maybe when you're a 37-year-old comms director for a, political candidate, you might interrupt an interview like that. But not only is she young and potentially inexperienced, again, I don't want to make that judgment necessarily, but she's his girlfriend. And like, maybe this is just, Ravi, like it's a conflict of interest thing too, which is like, it's hard to have your girlfriend be your manager, and inevitably someone is going to infer that there's something.
Yeah, it's also too recent. Like, for all the other weirdness aside, like if Nick Saban's wife was managing his PR, nobody would care because they've been together. Terry, I think is her name. They've been together forever, and so they're true life partners. This is Bill Belichick. Bill Belichick's been married twice. This is fairly recent, and there's just a lot of weird stuff going on in the background, including the fact that she bought. During the time that she met Belichick, she bought $8 million worth of property in the Boston area. A lot of people wondering what happened there. But in the wake of all of this, it was reported over the weekend that from Pro Football Talk that Belichick is hiring a PR specialist in lieu of all of this. So it's speculated. I'm not sure there's actual evidence that he's sidelining her. But that's what people are speculating, is that he's finally hiring true PR people.
Well, we have to be careful about obviously talking about this. Is we are three dudes talking about, casting some skepticism on this young woman's, qualifications to be suddenly in this role to run off. And if you step away from it for a minute and you think, okay, let's say Belichick went out and he just found a 24-year-old PR professional young man and was like, I would like you to run all my stuff, we wouldn't think it was weird. So like, we should acknowledge that. Now, the romantic relationship, all that, it's less so that this is controversial and more an interesting look into like even our own biases that still, and this is like where it crosses over with the politics, our own biases as to like what many, many different movies and stories have told us about what happens when a young woman gets involved. So it's like very hard to sort out. What are the biases that we're programmed for? What are the stereotypes that we have to correct for? Now, buying $8 million worth of property, that's kind of interesting. But anyway, so I don't have a point here other than we should mention that we should be wary of that kind of thing and make sure we're being fair to her.
It's funny. I've talked to so many people in my life about this from all different stripes. And the common thing I hear from people is something on the order of, I generally have no problem with age differences, but this one is testing even my limits. I've heard some version of that sentence, but I think it's biases, yes, but like also if her job is PR, you got to look at it on the merits, right? Unquestionably, Bill Belichick has been having bad PR over this.
Is he though? Are we sure it's bad PR?
Well, if he loses, the thing is, he's raised the stakes of the UNC thing.
That's
if he has a bad season, they will blame it on these distractions and say that he has changed.
Yeah, but I mean, he's a 73-year-old man who's never done anything all that interesting other than, win a lot in football. I mean, we're talking about him for something else. That's kind of interesting.
Yeah, it's all in the Trump era is all press, good press, like at some level. But yeah, I take your point about the biases. Even what I said earlier, it's fair. It's just there's too much smoke. It's like she's young, right? If it were a man, he would be young too. 24 is a young age to put trust in for a 73-year-old man worth millions and millions, tens of millions of dollars. She's dating him. That's whether if she was 50, it would be weird to have a little bit weird because of what Ravi says, not because of the relationship, because it's like she just came around, right? So that's a little bit weird. She's young for the job. That's weird. The age difference is weird. Belichick has historically been not somebody to give away power, let's say, to say the least. So, and now he's ceding it to a young person. That's weird. So it's just like, it's almost that to me, the collective of all of it is where you're like, okay, that's a lot of smoke for there to be no fire, that it's a little, and if I'm not mistaken, her, Belichick's daughter-in-law took to Instagram to call out this young woman, whatever her name is, Jordan Hudson, after the CBS interview as well. So like there's some family drama in it. And so, yes, Jason is 100% right. We should like hold our horses a little bit about talking too much shit about her.
I'm not trying to be.
That's a whole lot of smoke.
But Jason,
I'm not trying to be a scold or anything.
No, you're right. You're right.
Jason,
though.
let's do a hypothetical though. Let's pretend it's Melinda Gates, and she's dating a 24-year-old, and she's younger than Belichick, and this person is like showing up. First of all of a sudden has new property, and is showing up and managing her. She's doing a book tour, I think, right now, and this person's doing all her PR, super aggressive. In ways that, clash. I don't know what Melinda Gates's personality is, but let's pretend like it's some kind of distinct thing that we all knew about, and that she's like clashing with the image that we have of Melinda Gates, or like somebody like J.K. Rowling or somebody. You'd be like, huh. The obvious explanation here is worth considering.
Occam's razor, maybe.
Yeah.
maybe.
This is why you had to campaign to get this on. Last week I was like, should we talk about that? But it's worth talking about.
Well, I think we all have a healthy sports hatred for Boston fans, and I have enjoyed Dave Portnoy, Bill Simmons, all these guys having to pod about this, and every one of them says the same thing, which is, I love Belichick, and this is effing weird. I watched and it screwed up my YouTube algorithms. I watched the entire Dave Portnoy, Megyn Kelly interview for this, so now my YouTube's going to be totally screwed up. But he was despondent over this. He was like, look, I know them personally. I live in Nantucket where they live. He's like, this is going to get me in trouble. He's like, I've met her. She seemed fine before, but this whole package is bad. And he did a whole riff on it. And it was quite enjoyable as a Buffalo Bills fan, I have to say. I love seeing Boston fans.
I wish them all the best, truly. And I also think they should probably get out of business with each other. It's pretty much that simple. Like they should just get out. It's just not a good look for anybody.
That's fair. All right, Philip, let's play the SNL treatment of this.
Done, sir. Sir, this order will make it socially acceptable for a man in his 70s to date a 24-year-old.
That's right. We're calling it the Belichick law. We're going to make girlfriends young again, okay?
All right. Well, there you go. Perfect.
Can we just take a retrospective on the New England Patriots dynasty for a second here? Robert Kraft, we won't talk about what he did. I don't want to get you in trouble, Jason. 2 is
I didn't do it.
He's an owner, though. You're going to be a sports owner. I want you to get along with him.
Right.
Hernandez, Brady, and that roast, which I thought, as funny as it was really disrespectful to his family, I thought. And then this. I don't know. And then Junior Seau. I mean, just a dark franchise,
I bet. Let's be honest. If we went through every football franchise,
no,
everyone.
You're not looking for balance here. You're not looking for balance.
Not what we do here.
Let's be honest. But yes, let's take this moment to shit on the Patriots. I'm totally fine. And there's 6 Super Bowls.
Yeah.
And let's forget about 2017 entirely. It didn't happen.
Also, sometime go back and tell 9-year-old me that we could talk about the Patriots that way, because the Patriots were synonymous with terrible football when we were growing up, So anyway,
Red Sox too. It's like something about Boston in our adult lives.
Right.
They used to be the lovable or hateable losers, and now they're the lovable losers. Now they're the hateable winners.
Yes.
Made a deal with Faust. Okay. Number 2 here. Just a few hours ago, the White House announced that the 2027 NFL draft will be held in Washington, D.C. on the National Mall. Let's look at this announcement.
I'm pleased to reveal that the 2027 NFL draft, that's a big thing, will be held right here in our nation's capital, Washington, D.C., on the National Mall, and you get a little glimpse of it.
Okay, so this is an interesting new thing, by the way, about the second Trump administration, is that Trump for whatever reason, I mean, we have the intersection with sports, which is what this show's about, and Trump always trying to interject himself. But we also now have lately this thing where he wants to be mayor of DC. Like he's been doing several things that are about DC. He's been, putting his nose into DC politics and stuff. And I just don't understand what that's about. Does anybody?
Yeah, he wants to be. I mean, it's the same reason he wants to annex Greenland and Canada. Like he just wants to be in charge of everything. But this is, I think, as much about sports as it is about DC. It just happens to be that the two collide. Like he would have announced it. He would be happy to be like the commissioner of sports as opposed to the president. And in fact,
Yes.
let's let him do that.
He almost bought the
down.
Buffalo Bills, apparently, which I would have taken that kamikaze.
Yeah.
Like I would have taken that trade off if that would have kept him out of the White House.
Yeah, that's a big deal. You saying that?
Yeah.
Good deal.
Well, okay, so Green Bay attracted more than 600,000 fans for the 3-day event last month. Detroit established a record attendance with 750,000 in 2024. I remember when we had it here in Kansas City, it was a huge deal. Pittsburgh is going to host it next year. A recent study by the Anderson Economic Group estimated that the 2024 NFL draft generated over $165 million in net economic benefits for downtown Detroit. This includes direct spending, the wider economic activity prompted by the event, and factors such as money spent outside the area and potential revenue losses from regulars who may have avoided the bustling downtown during the draft.
It dovetails with our conversation last week. It's like I heard Bill Simmons talk about this, where he was like, "Who goes to these things? Like the draft is such a weird event to sit there and sit through. Like when they brought it to Nashville, they proposed. I can't remember if they went through with it, but the town went crazy because they were going to rip up all the trees downtown so that they can, have all these people there. And I'm like, that's a crazy thing to do. Is to like, this is a beautiful tree lined little area of downtown with businesses, and they're going to rip up all the trees for one event. But it's economic activity, and to your point about Trump, I guess I guess there could be some good to DC. I'm sure there's all sorts of bad that comes for him being really invested in what's happening in DC. But if he brings economic activity, DC is well suited for these types of big events because they have them all the time.
Also, like, you can't get around the fact that it will be good for DC, and DC needs this kind of thing. They don't have real representation. They don't really get anywhere near the amount of rights they should have in their own budget and all those sorts of things. And so that's it's a good thing.
I honestly see no downside. Like, I think it's great.
There's no downside. It's just odd that the president is standing there announcing as if he's the mayor of the town. But I guess
he has nothing to. I mean, I guess he has. Federal lands.
Yeah.
So like he's tangentially connected to it, or more than tangentially connected to it. But like, it's just he just can't help himself with being the center, trying to be the center of attention. But like, is this a good? Yeah, it's going to be awesome. Like, I'm with you, Ravi. Like, I would never go to the draft in a million years, but it's unquestionably a real event that people go to. It's a huge television event for sure. It'll be cool outside on the mall. Like, it's good. I'm for it 100%. I just wish that Trump spent his time. Like, if he spent more of his time doing this and less of his time doing, the rest of his job, I'd be, cool for the next 3 years.
Well, it's not like he has, 190 separate tariff agreements to negotiate around the world. He's got plenty of time to do stuff like this.
That's right. Well, okay. I think we disposed of this one quickly. Adisu, you want to take us through number 3?
Yeah, sure. Well, after the NFL draft, 2 NFL legends approached their franchise's new star players differently. First, let's start with for the young ones in the room, Warren Moon, the original run and shoot running black, worth saying quarterback, talking about Cam Ward, his new his team's new quarterback.
We have a special guest here.
It's going to be worn by Cam, and Cam will be starting a new, not regime here, but just a new freshness in this organization to kind of revitalize it and get it back to where it was a number of years ago.
First of all, Warren Moon looks great.
Looks great. Sounds great.
Wow.
Looks like he can still play.
Yeah, Warren Moon for those of you who weren't around. I mean, this was like what, the 80s, early 90s when Warren Moon was in his heyday. He was Lamar Jackson, I guess, is probably the best. He
Well, he just had
more
a
of thrower.
cannon
Yeah, he was
attached
more,
to his right arm.
but yeah, he was an incredible quarterback for the then Houston Oilers, who became the Tennessee Titans, where Cam Ward is now going to play. Ward
for
number
those,
one.
for those who are listening, he's handing his number over.
He's handing his number over. Yeah. So Ward, Moon was number one. He was, it was retired with the Titans / Oilers franchise. And Warren Moon said, go right ahead, Cam Ward, wear number one. This is your number now. And, took it out of the Ring of Fame or whatever it is in Tennessee and gave it to their new franchise quarterback. On the flip side, let's just go to it quickly. You've got the number 3 pick in the draft for the Giants, Abdul Carter from Penn State, who wore, or I think wanted to wear, number 56 for the Giants. And if you don't know who number 56 for the Giants was, go on YouTube and look up some Lawrence Taylor highlights. Probably the greatest defensive player in the history of the league. And Lawrence Taylor, politely but firmly, is what Philip put here. I think that's fair. Turned the request down, saying, I know he would love to wear that number, but hey, I think it's retired. Get another number. I don't care if it's 00, and then make it famous.
I think that's the right move.
I was going to say, so which I think the tee up here, Ravi, you could start us off.
Well, they're not the same, right? Like Warren Moon, as much as I respect him, and we had some great games against them, the Bills. We had that comeback game against them, and then years later they had the lateral, which wasn't with Moon, but it was like there's a Titans Oilers Bills rivalry that was heartbreaking for each side at various points. But I always respected him as a football player, but he's no Lawrence Taylor. Like Lawrence Taylor is like the equivalent of Michael Jordan. I think it's borderline disrespectful to even ask for Jordan's number. And I think Taylor rightfully should guard that number. Like he's the most important Giant in history. And and I thought he did it in a tactful way. I thought he was like, hey, go, he wasn't mad about it. He was like, you're going to go do big things and go make your own number mean something.
I think, Jason, I want you to chime in here, but it's also worth saying that it started this joint sort of Titan situation, Giant situation. Phil Simms, Abdul Carter, I think, wore 11 for the Penn State, which is Phil Simms' number, also retired by the Giants. And then Phil Simms just chimed in and was like, I'd probably give him number 11. Nobody asked, I don't think. And Abdul Carter was like, bro, I'm cool. Like, let's stop this. But what do you think? Do you think compare the sort of way that Warren Moon and the Titans went about it with the way Lawrence Taylor and the Giants went about it, and whether one or the other is the better approach?
Well, I think one big difference is that in the Titans situation, the original fan base is not part of the conversation, right?
Yeah.
So like the people who loved Warren Moon, they don't live in Nashville, right? They live in Houston. And so it's much simpler, I think, because then it's just Warren Moon deciding, but like it would, if like, I guess the comparison to Lawrence Taylor would be like Derek Thomas for the Chiefs. And I will tell you as a Chiefs fan, if a rookie were like, I think I should be able to wear 58, I'd be like, no, I don't think you should. Like as a fan, like I would be protective of it, and if in 25 years a rookie quarterback comes up and is like, I think I should be able to wear 15, I'm going to be like, no, I don't think you should, whereas if your franchise has moved, it's different. I think, like Thunder fans are not protective about Sean Kemp's records with the Sonics, right? So I think that's part of it, but in general, like I think this is just a fun debate. Like, I think I think everybody seems to have handled it pretty well, but I feel like the only way for it to be more fun is if they don't get along in the process.
Well, I just think I think there should be a norm that if your number is retired, nobody asks you for that number, because it defeats the purpose of having it retired. Because then it's like the assumption is, well, you're the asshole for saying no. It's almost just like, don't ask. Like, just let it be. Even if, and actually, now that I think about it, it's actually the people who are less well known who probably have the most to lose, because getting their number retired is a huge deal.
Yeah.
Like if you're not like in the actual NFL Hall of Fame and your number's retired, that's like the biggest honor you have, like in your sport. And to ask somebody for the number is a big deal.
It's interesting too, because I don't think Cam Ward asked the Titans to be number one. I think Moon volunteered it. And it's clearly an important number for Ward. I think when he transferred to Miami, he had it. He wore it at Washington State before he transferred. Like, so Warren Moon, the Hall of Famer, great former quarterback, was like, I want him to reclaim this number and make it his own. That's kind of cool. And I actually think that like maybe that is a cool counterpoint to what you just said, which I totally agree with, Ravi, which is like, let's let retired players like do the Warren Moon thing if they feel so compelled.
Yeah.
But the Abdul Carter asking for it is a little weird, but Jason, you're right. Carter himself did a good job of like not making it into a thing. He was like, I just asked, and the guy said no, and it's cool. And now we're on to Cincinnati.
I think it's really smart of the Titans, because when this rookie contract is over, if he does really well, there is an element of like, you were given Warren Moon's number. Like, you are expected, you and your agent are like the league and fans around the league will draw conclusions about him if he is not very agreeable in his renegotiation to try and stay with the team, because it'd be like, they gave you Warren Moon's number. Like, you're supposed to try to stick around. So that is kind of an interesting aspect to it, I think.
Well, let's go to our next story here. So the Nuggets won. They won their game 7, 120-101 against the Clippers. And Adisa, you and I were in Colorado recently. I played some tennis in Denver before then, trying to play some tennis up in Breckenridge. Denver is at over 5,000 feet above sea level. The air is thinner. There is less oxygen. You get tired really fast. You feel ill when you try to perform athletics in Denver. And, no surprise here when our producer looked into this, Philip. Denver has the largest point improvement at home of any other team in the NBA. Second is the Utah Jazz, also
very high.
Yeah, it's actually crazy. I'm not sure what to do with this, because you can't stop a team from playing at home. But I don't think people talk about this enough. Like, I heard like Bill Simmons talking about heading into game 7, and they were like, he had a guest on it, and they gave a passing reference to the fact that Denver is at altitude. Like, they play these older players, they seem more tired. I'm like, no shit. It's like so much harder to play at altitude. Like, I actually like, there's all this talk about Harden being choke artist, whatever. Yeah, there's a big history there. I don't blame anybody for underperforming going into a game 7 in Denver. That is I could barely play, like, I could play an hour of tennis usually without getting that tired. I couldn't play 10 minutes without feeling it in Denver.
Altitude sickness is a real thing, man. Like, I did Army intelligence training at Fort Huachuca, Arizona, in the mountains, and we would have days where like the training NCO would come out, and it was like our least favorite days, where it'd be 0600 in the morning, and you stand there in formation, and you don't know whether you're running or doing like what we called calisthenics, which is just like push-ups till you puke kind of thing. And he'd come out and say, today we're going to run until our feet hit snow, which really sucked, because you have to run pretty high in Arizona, in the mountains, for your feet to be on snow. And then when I came back from there, I could run forever. Like, and that's not even Denver. I mean, it was elevated, but so yeah, and you acclimate to it, and it I don't know what you do about it, but it is a huge difference.
You acclimate to it, but you acclimate to it over time. And so,
right. Yeah. The home players acclimate.
Maybe the second game, if you got 2 games, this is why game 7s are so dangerous, because you don't get time.
You don't get time. And I mean, we were there, Ravi and I, for a weekend, and my sleep with my ring that tracks my sleep the first night there was atrocious. Like, so bad that I basically didn't sleep. This is Breckenridge, which is even higher. It's in the mountains at like 9,000 feet, but same in Denver, probably to a lesser severity. Point is, the one night, it's interesting. They're going to be playing Oklahoma City in the next round, starting tonight, I guess. Starts in Oklahoma City. You get 2 games in Oklahoma City, then 2 games in Denver. Oklahoma City's probably going to win the series, don't get me wrong, but I'd be shocked if they win game 3 for this exact reason. Like, you actually could get some betting edges here. I'd be very curious to look at and I'm sure our best bettors in the, the world who are really doing this as a living are analyzing this, but like that first game back at altitude where you have to sleep in a altitude city for the first time, maybe in months, has got to be, they've got to have a huge advantage in those first games. And that's why they have a home field advantage or home court advantage in the regular season when everybody is coming on a one-time thing. But it is, yeah, it's like, I think that's probably why 35-year-old James Harden had a stinker on Saturday. It's got to be a big part of it. Like, he's old like we are, and you just played 6 hard games, and you just played an elimination game at home, and you had to fly there, and you got one bad night of sleep, and then you have to show up and play a grueling game of Game 7 basketball at a Mile High. Like, come on.
Well, it's apparently not just specific to basketball. The Broncos' home field improvement is tied for the second largest in the NFL. The Rockies are 2 times better than any other team's home away disparity in the MLB this century. The Avalanche ranked 6th in the home and away point differential. So it seems like a trend. I don't think there's anything to be done about this other than I think commentators should talk about this like it's a way bigger deal. People talk about it like it's a side story, I guess, because it's an enduring thing. I guess it's not, there's nothing novel about it, but this should be the first explanation for any close loss, especially by an older team heading into any conditions like this. You know,
it kind of makes you wonder why, like, if you like, I know usually in the NFL, you for a road game, you practice at home all week, and then a day or two before, I'd have to look. I wonder how far ahead, because the thing is, you still got to have facilities to practice, but like, how far ahead can you go to Denver to play?
You'd almost want to gas up the jet so that the minute game 2 is over, you're Oklahoma City, you're like, get on the plane. We're going, and maybe start in Breckenridge, actually train in Breckenridge, come down to Denver for the game. You know?
And like, if you're an MLB team and you have a series against the Rockies, like, can you take your 3 starting pitchers and send them there 3 days ahead and have, you know, like, it is an interesting.
I bet you it happened. Like, I bet you that, you know, these teams, they have state-of-the-art, you know, training staffs, etc. My guess is they try to simulate. They probably do the hyperbaric chambers and stuff. You know, if you're the OKC's health and conditioning team, like, they've got to know this. It's obviously they do know this, and they probably have figured out ways to expand their lung capacity and other things to deal with not just the elevation, but the quick change in elevation. That's probably the problem. So I'd be really curious, honestly, to see to have on here, like, after the season. We should, Philip, mark this down. Let's try to go get, assuming OKC eliminate, maybe they win the title, like a training staff person or somebody on a sports team who actually, like, has to deal with this, who's in Denver's division, or maybe who plays in the AFC West. Jason, you can work on this, plays the Broncos, and see how they change their preparation playing Denver versus another team.
The funniest version of this was Mike McDaniel, the Dolphins coach. I think that when they're playing the Bills, and then one year they're playing you guys, the Chiefs, he would crank up the AC. And then he had shirts saying, I wish it were colder or something. And it's so stupid. And I'm like, why not just get on an airplane? You can't rent like St. John Fisher College or something in Rochester and like actually play outside in the cold. Like, wouldn't that like help more?
I don't know, man. The logistics of taking all that training staff that you have at home and all the people who work on, who know what's wrong with your ankle, you know, all that stuff. All right, here's just to end this. Let's do some numbers that fly right in the face of everything we just said. The Rockies this season have won twice as many games at home as they have won on the road. However, that means they have won 4 games at home.
It can't erase a bad team.
It's just it just means, like, that's how hard the Rockies organization is working on tanking for draft picks. I guess they are taking it to new levels. The Rockies are 6-28 this season, and I mean, that's pretty remarkable.
It's hard to do in baseball, although they beat my Braves last. One of those is they beat the Braves last week, but yeah, it's hard in baseball. Like, just random chance is going to cause you to have a game where you win, but
the Royals had a 4-game series and we swept a 3-game series maybe a couple weeks ago, and I remember watching that, and every guy that came to the plate, I was just like, who's this guy? Like, and I follow baseball pretty close, and a new guy would come to the plate and I'd be like, never heard of him, you know? Like, it was like they were just like a Like, is there a strike on in Colorado that I don't know about? And these are all like scab players. Anyway, so
They all have great lung capacity though. So
yes, they do. They should think about cross country. All right. Number 5. Funnily enough, it turns out that referees might actually have vision problems after all. Let's play this ad from LASIK. So, since I was trying to talk over that, if it's the whole ad is just basically saying that better vision, better calls, they're free LASIK surgery to referees, umpires, whoever. To qualify, you must be a referee or an official actively involved in officiating games within the NFL, NHL, MLB, NBA, MLS, NWSL, or USNT. In the ad, they have a guy in the zebra shirt who's clearly an actor. But LASIK is also offering a reward to fans who nominate referees for their free surgery package, with eligible fans receiving $1,000 off their own LASIK procedure. Anyway, so you can report these referees. The interesting thing about it is that, first of all, LASIK says that they get tagged about 5 to 10 times a day on social media by individuals who are now pointing out bad calls. That's steadily grown over the past year. That's like before this campaign. And the team behind this, which is at Front Office Sports, says that more than 10 refs have actually taken them up on free LASIK or a similar surgery called PRK, which can often cost around $5,000 for both eyes. LASIK declined to say which leagues the officials work in or whether they were specifically called out on social media.
Probably a good idea, LASIK. Good job.
Well, I think the obvious defense of the refs is they could be wearing contact lenses or glasses and wanting to swap them out. 2 is I got LASIK during the pandemic and it was the best thing that ever happened to me. That is a miracle surgery. Miracle.
All right, so let's just say genius campaign, man.
Really good.
And now they can point to we've actually done. I mean, think about what they haven't spent that much on this. It's absolutely the kind of thing that goes viral. Like it's mostly probably a lot of earned media on this. And what did they lay out? Like a few grand on some referrals and some surgeries.
Yeah, for the people who are not watching but listening, the ad, I would say production quality.
Yeah, they did not spend much on
that was filmed on an iPhone. So yeah, this was a couple grand of whatever for a lot of publicity. And honestly, it's fun. Like hating on the refs is fun. It's a part of being a sports fan. And I think I just got through a series with shout out the Golden State Warriors for winning Game 7 last night, where I would say I went to games 4 and 6 here in the Bay. And I think I probably spent a third of my time in the stands yelling about it's just part of the game. Like you can't take it away. So might as well take advantage of it and make a fun, promotional. Good on the marketing people. At least.
Really funny. There's this Sunday Conversations guy, Jason. I've sent you this guy on Barstool.
Mm-hmm.
He does these really funny interviews. He did Luka Doncic 2 weeks ago, where he asked Luka about whether he would ever become a ref after he retired. Luka famously hates the refs. It was just a really funny back and forth. It's worth taking a look at.
Well, this, we've talked on here before about how there are protocols to how you call out the refs or the umpires or whatever. And it reminds me of, I was at one of my son's games, True's 11. And this was this weekend. And there's a thing in baseball where whether you're a fan, whether you're on the field, whatever, if there's a close ball strike call and it gets called a ball, what you do is you yell to the pitcher. The protocol is you yell, "Hey, that looked good. Try it again." Right? Or just, "Hey, look good, look good." And everybody understands that that's you saying that probably should have been called a strike, but it's sort of an acceptable way to do it, right? Because you're not addressing the umpire. Well, I mentioned this to say that I was sitting next to another dad at the game, and I could hear one of the other dads behind us, who's kind of a cantankerous fella, and is sort of known for being a little bit of a confrontational. It's just part of his personality. And he was yelling, "Look good, Blue, look good." And I just turned to the other dad and I was like, look good will do, and it's like, it's just funny. Like when the protocols and you just decide to address the umpire. It's anyway, I don't know.
Part of the deal. It's part of the deal. Well, let's just have a fun, which umpire referee, whose name do you know in whatever sport. I assume it'll be the Bills for you, Ravi. But
I actually don't even know the names of the people involved because I usually black out after these losses. So it's like,
who called the first down, the non-first? Which
I don't know.
called the
I
non-first
do
down?
know that I just listened to enough Bill Simmons to know that he has a lot of questions about one NBA ref in particular. I actually forget his name off the top of my head, but if I heard it, I would know where he.
Yeah.
One guy.
Well, in baseball, it was for years. It was Angel Hernandez.
Yeah. Is he still around?
No, he took a bite. He retired. They finally got him to, and then now a lot of people. He's nowhere near an Angel Hernandez territory, but people talk about CB Buckner. But I mean, Angel Hernandez was like legendarily bad. I mean, it was like, and it's a really hard job, obviously, but he was just quite bad at his job. Like I can remember. It was like, and the understated ways that the announcers will call it out. Like there was a Royals game with Angel Hernandez behind the plate, like I don't know, 3 or 4 years ago, and it was first pitch of the game, and it's down the middle, and they have the box and they have the little it leaves the indentation on the screen of where the ball went through the zone, and it's like, and the announcer Ryan Lefevre goes, and that's down the middle for ball 1 to start the game. And he was just legendarily atrocious at the job.
Man.
The guy I was thinking of is Joey Crawford, and as you were talking,
I miss him.
I looked up his Wikipedia page, and this is one entry on his Wikipedia page. On April 15, 2007, Crawford ejected San Antonio Spurs player Tim Duncan during a game against the Mavericks. Duncan had been sitting on the bench where Crawford assessed 2 technical fouls. Crawford said that Duncan had been laughing at him and insulted him with an expletive, while Duncan said that Crawford asked him if he wanted to fight. Crawford was eventually fined and named it as one of the biggest regrets of his career.
Hey man, refs are people.
No way,
too.
Tim Duncan was.
That's incredible.
On the bench.
I'll tell you the most memorable for me of like all these is what was the guy's name? Forget the name of the umpire, but it was the Andres Galarraga, not Andres Galarraga. What was the kid?
Yes,
the what's the kid
game.
who threw the perfect game? His last name was Galarraga.
Jim something.
Yeah. Anyway, clearly a really good dude, and they even interviewed. He like did a press conference a day later where he was He was like, I took a perfect game away from that kid. And he handled it.
Armando Galarraga.
Yeah, Andres Galarraga's a hitter. But Galarraga handled it great. But he that was the right way to handle it. He was and there's people who campaigned for him to be given a perfect game because there's only been like 28 or whatever of those in the history of Major League Baseball. And he missed it bad too.
Dankinger, of course, and
But Dankinger is a genius. He, for those who don't know, he blew a call in. I was 4 years old, but he blew a call in Game 6 of the World Series in 1985
in the Royals' favor.
Yeah, which I like to point out. There was only it would have been only the first out, I think, of the inning, and also then Jack Clark failed to catch a pop up, and then we went on to win the Game 7. People think it was Game 7. We went on to win Game 7, 11-0. But
who was that against?
The Cardinals. That's why it gets
even
bantied about
more.
here a lot. Yeah.
Did the Royals win the World Series that year?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah,
the Royals have won. Yes, exactly.
And then we did it again 30 years later. Exactly.
They've won more World Series in the last in your lifetime than the Mets.
That's correct.
That's interesting.
Yeah, sad but true.
All right. Well,
let's
do our deep dive here. So Trump is considering an executive order targeting NIL deals. And this comes as Nick Saban gave remarks. I guess Trump was speaking in Alabama, and Saban, I guess, had a side conversation with him. Saban, I think, famously hates NIL, as does Tommy Tuberville, who is the senator from Alabama, who also was the disgraced Auburn coach before that. I've always been wondering what Saban's politics are, because he endorsed Manchin, if you remember, because they grew up together. I don't love this relationship. You get these people who are the most disciplined people you could ever imagine, and all they're about is discipline and character and all this kind of stuff, and then they're hanging around with Trump, and you're like,
that's the presidency, man.
How do you square this?
It's the presidency. It's people want to be around that kind of thing. And I didn't know the thing about Manchin, but I mean, I'm not surprised to find out that Nick Saban is a Trump guy.
Well, his wife is famously very involved in social causes, so I'm going to look her up while we're talking.
I'm not sure he is a Trump guy.
I'm not sure. I agree. I don't want to tarnish the man.
Yeah.
I guess he was just. I guess they were at the commencement, right?
Yeah.
So I guess let's be fair to him. I'm sorry, it's not like it was a rally. It was at the commencement. He had a conversation. Trump wants to be commissioner of all sports. All right, well, let's do background on the NIL here real quick. NCAA went from limiting athlete compensation to scholarships and housing to full deals that pay athletes more than they would make in professional leagues. According to Open Doors, nearly $1.6 billion was exchanged through NIL deals in 2024 to 2025. Relaxed transfer rules have made it easier for college athletes. We've talked about this, to basically treat it like a lower professional league, and they shop themselves around. It's like free agency in a lower professional league. Multiple NIL sponsored athletes forwent declaring for the WNBA. We've talked about this too, and even the NBA to return to college with massive paydays. So a combination of school policies and state laws dictate what deals athletes can make. In states with no oversight, the NCAA has universities write policies for their own athletes. Some common school requirements are that athletes get business advice or training before making deals, or preventing them from promoting certain products. State laws are primarily focused on preventing NIL deals from being used as recruitment tools. That doesn't seem to be working. Schools can't pay students directly, but some states have murky laws surrounding just how involved a school's booster club can get.
I think we can say with relative certainty that it's the Wild West right now.
Yes.
And whether that means that we should have the president of the United States weighing in with an or the administration with an executive order, that's obviously something we're going to discuss here. But it is both a good thing. We've talked about this on this podcast before, that these athletes are getting paid. They're generating a lot of revenue for their universities, and also it's kind of a mess. The two things can exist in concert. So Nick Saban seems to be, well, we should put up a clip of him discussing NIL. He seems to be he's an opponent of NIL as it currently exists, but I think he's like in the reform, not replace kind of situation. So let's see what he had to say.
This college football should not be paid for play. So as happy as I am that the players have an opportunity to make some money by using their name, image, and likeness, I don't think it should be used to influence guys on where they go to school. So it shouldn't be used in recruiting, and it shouldn't become a pay for play, device that we use professionally as coaches to get guys to come to our school or play for our team.
Start there, Ravi. I mean,
well, I just did a deep dive on whether Nick Saban is a Democrat or Republican, and most of the internet seems to think that if he is anything, he's a Democrat because you.
Okay, well, I'm sorry, I take it back.
Well, it's just it's very thinly sourced websites that are like.
I feel terrible because I just said I'm not surprised.
Please run against Tuberville,
Coach. Because he had previously.
Yeah, he would win.
He had previously supported the Voting Rights Act, like voting rights legislation at like key periods of time recently, supported Manchin, and also he said he wanted players to be unionized, like auto workers.
Okay. All right. Look, he's a woke liberal. Clearly, I feel terrible. I'm sorry, Nick Saban. Coach, I will buy Aflac. I'm sorry. I don't know
is what I'm saying. And maybe he's nothing, but I just want to make sure that
clear up the record here. But what do you think about the pay?
Good work.
I think what he just said there is right.
It was also very careful.
Yes, but I also think I don't want to say naive because he's too smart for that, but like, I'm not sure it's possible to have a world in which NIL deals aren't used as recruitment tools. Like that's
but pay to play is such a unique. It's like the framing of it is like use it pay to play. Well, Patrick Mahomes is paid to play. It's like it sounds like you're like a politician taking a bribe.
Quid pro quo. But as my dad likes to say, you can't get the shit back in the horse. We're here now. That's what this is. That's what's happening.
And I don't think that's what's happening explicitly. It's happening. This is my understanding. Is essentially you have boosters who guarantee deals like NIL deals for these players if they come to their teams, right? It's not like the University of California is just shelling out money for a player like the Kansas City Chiefs are shelling out money for Mahomes. But what's the difference? Right. It's really nothing. So like what?
Well, it's not taxpayer dollars, which just helps if you're a taxpayer.
True.
Right? So
True. In the public institutions. And I guess that's probably where Saban is coming from, right? It is going to be harder for public institutions probably to compete with private institutions in football and other places, because all it takes, we talked about this a couple of years ago, I think BYU, right? A couple of weeks ago, I should say, BYU has some rich guy in Utah who like has decided that BYU athletics is going to be his thing, and it's a private institution, so God bless. And now the number one basketball recruit in the country, like a black
Weird how that works.
woman, is like coming to
I love
BYU.
Hey, I love this though.
Is he gonna?
Every
is he
school
gonna
has
room, He's gonna room with their Jewish quarterback. You know about that dude, right?
No,
He's,
really?
Oh, he's
I
a
love
legend. You got to look him up. He's like there. He's his NIL deal. This is not a joke. Is with Manischewitz.
Oh, there you go.
See, so there you go. But I'm not sure I see anything wrong with this. Like, we should talk about the EO implications and the specifics of it. But I'm like,
I'm trying to think of what are like the most Jewish products in my life, and for some reason the New York Times came to mind just because all the liberal Jews in my life.
You're gonna get us all in trouble,
Like,
brother.
like what do all the Jews that I know in New York? What's their favorite thing? Is
Well, I mean, look, I'm what they call a regional Jew out here in Kansas City. So you probably are better equipped to know than me because you're in the heart of the diaspora. But
RIP within.
Philip just said RIP game within. I'm still fine. Ravi's questionable.
That one will not be
that is
clipped for social.
That is a good stereotype.
Philip's Jewish. We're fine.
Yeah.
Okay. And so am I, for the record, for people listening. All right. Here's before we get into the executive order, I don't remember where things landed on whether these athletes could unionize because they're not really getting wages. We never got around to them being able to unionize, right?
I don't think they can. I don't.
So,
which is weird that would be his position.
Well, here's what's interesting to me about that is that I've long thought that if you wanted to strengthen particularly before NIL, if you wanted to strengthen unions through the southeastern part of the United States, you allow college athletes to unionize because you look at these states, Louisiana, Alabama, what do all these states have in common? They're all right to work states.
Right.
They're all states with laws on the books that specifically weaken unions and organizing. And if all of a sudden the Alabama football team was less competitive than the UConn football team because the union organizing rights are so much weaker in Alabama, all of a sudden you're going to have a bunch of Republican legislators rethinking their right to work laws in Alabama. It's just a fun thought experiment, by the way.
It is.
So maybe put that in an executive order.
They're already thinking about eliminating income taxes in some of these SEC states
So
on
stupid. So stupid.
NIL to make the University of Georgia or the University of Alabama or Auburn or whatever a more attractive place to
because
come.
they've lost their dominance.
Yeah, exactly. So if it's clear that like state legislators in these states care enough about the power of their football teams that they're willing to legislate basically special deals for them like they were some big corporation, because they kind of are. So yeah, they would. I think that's a brilliant thought, but it does feel like they are not employees,
right?
And I think explicitly not employees of their institutions. That's what NIL is. It's like side deals with side people. They're
really the opposite. Yeah.
Yeah, they're the opposite. So
every school has a bunch of buddy guarantees, right? So the question is like, we talked about this before. It's going to be a fluid arms race because there really is no, like unless like you bring in the likes of like an Elon Musk and like Zuckerberg or something, which a lot of these people didn't go to like schools of interest here, but like unless somebody like that steps in and is like, my NIL deal is going to be $100 million or whatever, and they just piss their money away, then I think it'll be people with relatively the same amount of wealth, 10 to 100 million types who are like all over the South, all over a lot of these programs, pulling their money together and having relatively similar bank accounts. But if it did turn into a true arms race, that's good. It's the wealth distribution. You got a lot of these people who are like, we try to tax them anyway. It's like, all right, like if the backup offensive tackle at the University of Michigan who's not going to get drafted in the NFL is making $1 million, it's probably a better world.
Yeah, I'm good with that. All right, let's look at this. Go ahead, Adisa.
No, I was going to say it's not a bad argument, right? It's like,
Yeah.
okay, what's the worst that could happen at some level? It's like rich boosters are giving money to, on balance, less wealthy kids and their families.
Yeah, let's be honest.
Okay.
The kids are not hurt in this deal. The only people who are hurt and who Saban is upset on behalf of and who would Trump, it's all a fan-oriented thing. And I guess the coaches, because they lose their, in the programs, because they lose their great players. But really, like, we talked about this before on the show. Like, this is just a question of, are we finding it as fun to watch? And are there as many, heartwarming stories? No, because it's now the minor leagues of football and basketball. Like, that's what it's become. And also, by the way, to some extent, baseball. Increasingly, it's totally changed college baseball as well. So
how's that? I don't know.
Because now, because
make more than you would in the minors.
Right on, man.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
unless you are a huge, high draft pick, it doesn't make sense for you to leave the University of Tennessee or the University of Texas or whatever to go, into the minors. It makes more sense. And to hang around another year or two and then boom, like Paul Skeens, the most dominant pitcher in the world right now. He was at Air Force, okay, because his whole family had been Air Force. He was pitching for Air Force. And then they were like, hey, you need to be in a more competitive program because you're the most dominant pitcher we've seen. And so he went to LSU, pitched 1 or 2 years at LSU, and then went, and I'm sure he had a great NIL deal there, but he was not in the minors very long at all. Jack Caglione, who's the top prospect for the Royals, which, by the way, people should look him up because there's a great viral video from him from 2 seasons ago. He's a potential two-way star. He throws 100 miles an hour. He's a left-handed first baseman going to be converted to right field so he can come up. He set the all-time NCAA record, I think, for single-season home runs. Was drafted last year by the Royals. He will almost certainly be in right field, which, by the way, he's not a right fielder. We're working on converting him. It's the only reason he's not up yet for the Royals, probably by July or August. So, point being, you get up to the majors quicker. You spend less time in the minors because you're more mature. Like, it's happening in all sports.
Yeah.
Well, I think the thing that's really going on is Saban is power, right? With the transfer portal combined with NIL, coaches have less power because now when you have boosters paying a ton of money for a player and that player is not starting, the coach is getting a lot of pressure. That player can also leave and take a bigger deal. So when you're a coach like Saban, who I appreciate his style, he's instilling a lot of discipline on players who I think really can benefit from that and probably become infinitely better football players under his leadership. There are going to be a lot of those players just telling them to F off if they have the wrong conversation with him and they're going to go to another team. And or even if they have the right conversation, if there's just more money, they're going to leave. So they have way more power than they had before. The boosters have way more power than they had before. And it's not like, I don't know how this works, but I don't think the coach has to say what the boosters give, right? So the boosters decide who they give the money to, right?
I mean, theoretically,
yeah.
Or they have GMs now. I was going to say that's the other piece,
right? That's the thing,
right? There's now another layer of management of Andrew Luck, I think, is the GM for Stanford. Shaq just took the GM job at Sacramento State, which is like I assume a part-time job for him. But
so is everything.
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
a great job, by the way.
But like, you now have a booster, a GM, and an athlete, all who have taken some modicum of power away from the coach, who basically could just recruit players on sheer force of will, reputation. I mean, there was money, I'm sure, going under the table.
Yeah, but it used to be, look, you come play with me, you're going to get seen, you're going to make it to the league, whatever sport you're in, which was all a long way of saying, you want to get a bag, I can help you get that bag. Now it's like, it's not help you get to it. It's like, here's the bag.
Yeah.
It's just shortened.
There's a great book about Nick Saban. I forget the name of it, but I buy that Nick Saban wasn't paying players. Like, I wouldn't be shocked if he was, but I'm more likely to believe that he wasn't.
No, it's a pretty heavily scrutized.
Yeah.
I mean, they won a lot.
He gets offended, I think, for good reason, because he did it the right way. And and in some ways this should help him because it puts it all above board now. So if he was doing it the right way, now at least everybody has the same tools at their disposal. But his pitch was always a negative sell. He would go to players. He'd be like, look, I'm not going to guarantee you're going to start like everybody else will, because you're going to be competing against the best of the best. What I can guarantee is the best strength training program, the best coaching you can have, and the best culture to become the best person you can be. And through your process here at Alabama, here are the statistics. We sent more people to the NFL draft than anybody else. We win more national championships and all that. So you could take a promise from, like pick a coach down the street, Dabo Swinney or whatever. He's going to promise you the world. I'm going to show you the results. And that's kind of how he pitched. And I think that's a harder pitch to make when there's so much money at the table.
Right.
Yeah.
Right
All
in
right.
front.
Let's talk about the executive orders. Okay, a potential EO could look to block college athletes from being recognized as employees. Okay, it could be unconstitutional and run afoul of equal protection if college athletes are denied the same rights, including for employment and other economic opportunities that their classmates enjoy. An executive order might also run afoul of the First Amendment to the extent it limits how college athletes express themselves, given, endorsements and that sort of thing. The NCAA is currently awaiting decisions by U.S. District Judge Claudia Wilkins to rule on final approval of the House versus NCAA antitrust case. The $2.8 billion House settlement, which is nearing approval, created a revenue sharing plan for college athletics in which schools would start directly paying their athletes. In addition, athletes would have to report any deals worth more than $600. Universities would also be capped in the amount of revenue schools could share with the athletes. So these are the potential directions that it could go.
I don't hate it. I just am not sure this is something that federal legislation, or I guess federal executive action, would solve, really. I'm not sure we need to. I don't know what problem we're solving for with this, other than the one that Robbie brings up, which is that suddenly, and the one that you bring up, coaches are less powerful, and college athletics, in a way, are less fun because they're more there. It used to be a distinct sport from the professional, and now it is not. But that has honestly been the case from when we were young to when we are now middle-aged. It wasn't that NIL did this, it probably accelerated it, but kids weren't staying in school 3-4 years, to your point. Kids, you didn't have continuity in programs. You did have transfers. You just had to wait a year, which was annoying and bad for the student. So, in my opinion, I get where Saban is coming from, but I also think it's a mess, like I said up front. But I also think that it is maybe a solution in search of a problem.
Let me talk about the politics of this, not the sports politics, the politics of it. Why does it make sense for? I mean, look, I think somewhat Trump is distracted by this kind of thing and that sort of stuff, but politically, it makes sense because who are Trump and the Republicans interested in solidifying their base with? Men who would otherwise probably be independent to persuadable voters, to continue to send the message to them that we care about what you care about, right? There's a lot of men who consume sports and only follow politics, when it's close to voting time, and may get a lot of what they know through these are the people who are forming their opinions about politics through the channels that they're already watching, which is what they're watching or listening to because it's what they're interested in. These are the people whose politics form through Rogan, through stuff like that, right? So if you're continuing to solidify that world, you do something that they want, which is to make college sports more like what you grew up with and
great again.
Right. Exactly. Now, so then if you're the Democrats, you have a choice here, right? You have to recognize this is doing something on behalf of fans that doesn't drive economic value to anybody. In fact, it takes economic value away from people who are putting in labor. So what I think the Democrats' instinct is going to be like, this is a distraction. Why does he care about this? Well, if you do that, you're already losing the people who he's going after. So my argument would be do what's right, which is stand up and say, why are you going to screw these kids who are working hard? I would say the Democrats should engage in this and should take a position on this. And that position is two things. One, a practical thing, which is this market is very new and the government should not insert itself into a market that doesn't know what it looks like yet, right? There's no way the government's going to stay ahead of market forces in this. It's too new. But the better, more political argument is these kids work. They should be paid for their work. That has been a popular argument for a long time. And I think that somebody like Cory Booker, who played tight end at Stanford, I believe. Maybe I will text Corey this. Corey, you should engage on this and say he's wrong. I'm going to do that when the show is
He's
over.
been all in on NIL stuff from the jump for this exact reason. Like he was on the forefront of the
Corey's already
original
thought of this.
NIL
He doesn't
solution.
need a text from me.
But no, you should
I will
send him
send
a
moral
text, though.
support.
You should send him a text. But I completely agree. I think your first point is also really important to reinforce, which is like this matters. It's obviously the tagline of this podcast, but like this is not a small issue for a large segment of the population, regardless of if you're on the Saban side or you're against Saban. Like the validity and sanctity of college sports, not just in the South, but like across the country for particularly men of a certain age, is like their number one thing. College football probably top of the list, but also basketball, baseball, you name it. So like it is not something to treat. And it's I think one of Trump's superpowers in some ways is that things that maybe are not the province by the letter of the law of his job, but that matter to a lot of people, he figures out a way to insert himself into. Sports being the main topic of this podcast, but it's true across the board. And Democrats, I think, tend to be like, why are you even talking about that? I've even said that on this podcast, but it turns out the reason why is because a lot of people care.
Right. It's why they pretend that every women's swim meet has a trans athlete in it. Okay, because it's relatable. People understand it. Their lives intersect with it. But the truth is, like, who are the Democrats' natural demographic in this debate? It is these athletes who oftentimes are the first generation of their family to go to college because they play a sport. They get the opportunity. They wouldn't be able to afford it otherwise. And now they're having the opportunity to do it and actually get paid while the university is making lots of money off of them. Obviously, we should continue to take up for them, I think.
Yeah, and I just think this is an area where Trump's chaotic energy, if he treats this like this kind of tariff type of thing with like, just drops a big change policy in the middle of like a season or the recruiting season even, it's not going to go over well because this is an entitlement. People are taking this money now. They're counting on this money, and to take that away from him would lead to a lot of recrimination. So my prediction is either he doesn't do it or he does it and then backs off immediately after the backlash, because this is a domestic problem for him. It's one thing to throw a bunch of tariffs on Canadians. It's another thing to take away money from athletes and families all across this country, including a lot of people who voted for you.
Yeah. All right. Well, this was fun as usual. Thanks, y'all. We got into all sorts of different stuff today. So
Even got potentially canceled. So
yeah,
if this is our last show, we had a blast.
We managed to hit a few different avenues to do that. So that's exciting. All right. Thanks everybody for listening. Please, rate the show, share the show with others, do all those things. And thanks for listening. Sports really do matter quite a lot.